Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this review, we are looking at the not SH Figuarts, not Captain Ginyu figure from Demoniacal Fit. This is the Special Force Captain. Not quite the ring of Captain Ginyu, but it's okay. It's a bootleg, or a third-party figure to be more precise. A lot of people will say bootleg or knockoff for something like this. It's not. It's an original mold. They made it, so it's not a bootleg or a knockoff. It is third-party, unlicensed, maybe illegally used copyrighted material, that kind of thing. And so a lot of people are probably really interested in these, which is understandable. Adding more characters to our Dragon Ball shelf is definitely going to be a good thing in most people's eyes. But the question is, for being a third-party figure, is it worth adding to the collection? How's the quality? Does it blend in? And well, I'm going to tell you all that kind of stuff, everything you need to know. And just so you know, the price point for these guys, I believe, is around 70 bucks. I'm thinking some people maybe paid a little bit more than that, but I think it's about 70 bucks. This is my buddy's. I'm not buying these third-party figures. I'll explain why as we go. But so that's why I don't know the price exactly. All right, so there's definitely a lot to talk about on this guy because it's a very unique situation. So let's go ahead and get him off the stand and take a closer look. This guy stands just about exactly 18 centimeters because his horns are basically the same height as the rest of his head, and that makes him just above 7 inches. And scale-wise, it's not terrible because the Dragon Ball figures haven't scaled properly anyways, because typically the big guys aren't quite as big as they should be. And the small guys aren't quite as small as they should be. So, for example, Broly's a little bit smaller than he probably should be. But this guy kind of breaks that rule because he's a bigger guy, but he's even bigger than he should be within this line. He makes Goku look tiny. And Captain Ginyu's not that big. And since the big guys are smaller in this line already, such as Android 16 or Broly or Nappa, they're all smaller than normal. This guy is huge, relatively speaking. He dwarfs many of the figures. So that is definitely going to be an issue. By the time they get to Birder and the other guys, they're going to start getting huge. Like huge if they're in scale. So that's definitely a bit of an issue to consider. I imagine most people won't care, but it's my job to give you the information, not to tell you what to care about. You can care about whatever you like, and I'll just let you decide what's useful or not to you. Alright, now, I guess let's talk about the paint first. The paint's okay. We do have a few different shades of purple, but it's nothing drastically different. The neck is definitely a little bit different, and then the arms are kind of different than the legs, but it's not terrible. Depending on your lighting, like right now in the studio lighting, it doesn't look that bad. When I was just looking at him normally, it was a little bit more obvious, but again, it's not terrible. I think most people are going to be able to live with it, especially considering we have issues like that with figures like Majin Vegeta anyway. So it's something that's probably okay. The paint itself is mostly pretty clean. You can see around the purple, like to the purple to the white transitioning, it's pretty good. It's not perfect, but it'll do. The only real issue is a little bit of quality control type stuff. Like on this forearm, it looks like it's got a drop of water or something on it, but that's just the way it is. It's got some kind of weird problem in the paint. Otherwise, it's pretty clean. The logo here is nice. No real issues. I will say it doesn't have any shading, and that does hurt a figure like this because it's just a whole lot of plain purple, and it's not a particularly sharp sculpt either. And somebody mentioned in one of my other review comment sections, they don't know what that means, so I'll clarify briefly. A sharp sculpt is when you have really clean edges and high level of detail, whereas a soft sculpt kind of looks like it's unfinished. And this isn't necessarily unfinished looking, but it doesn't have a whole lot of detail. Like, for instance, the thighs here, you can see they only have one line going down the middle. We're missing some anatomy there, and it just doesn't look like much of anything, really. It's just kind of like a facsimile to actual anatomy and sculpt work. There's no real detail in the tricep, for instance. The biceps kind of not there. Very soft sculpt. So a little bit of shading would have gone a long way on this guy, and unfortunately he doesn't have it. But the white paint is pretty clean, transitioning to the black, so I'll give him that. The faces, again, relatively soft, and the paintwork is minimal, but let's go ahead and talk about the accessories because he has a bunch of faces, or to be more accurate, he has a bunch of heads. He has the one neutral head where he's not really smiling, but kind of is with the scouter. Then he has one head where he is smiling with the scouter, one head where he's yelling with the scouter, one head where he's smiling without the scouter, and then one head where he's yelling without the scouter. And they're all done well enough. Not great, but about well enough. We do have a few different sets of hands. We have the 2 fist hands, 2 pointing finger hands, 2 karate chop style hands, and then 2 style pose hands. So plenty of accessories. I think that's a pretty good thing. Again, this guy comes in at a pretty high price point. Now, let's consider the fact that he is relatively large and does come with a lot of accessories. I think that warrants the price. However, it is a third-party figure, and it does have a lot of QC issues in terms of engineering and sculpt and that kind of stuff. So maybe not necessarily QC, but design issues and things. So let's go ahead and get into the articulation or the engineering, and we'll go from there. So the head obviously pops off of that ball peg. We have your standard ball hinge, which is common for the Dragon Ball figures, unfortunately. However, it doesn't really want to rotate. You're going to have to really kind of force it and hope that it doesn't break. If that breaks, you're screwed, because then you can't connect his head. So good luck with that. The neck is on a ball peg, it feels like, but it moves almost not at all. You get to wiggle it just the tiniest little bit. No rotation, no leaning forward and back. Very minimal range. Shoulder pads are on a hinge, which is about standard. That's okay, they work well enough. The shoulders themselves are on some kind of weird butterfly joint, which just kind of moves around inside the torso, which is useless. Absolutely useless. Doesn't help. Then the shoulder itself is connected on a ball peg to that, but there's no range for the ball peg itself, so useless. We have a ball hinge shoulder, which goes out horizontally. That's fine. You would have full rotation if it wasn't for all the shoulder pads and everything, so that's fine. Bicep swivel's okay. Double jointed elbow. It works pretty well. I thought it just broke, but it was just stuck apparently. So that works okay. It's definitely ugly. There's no sculpt on the elbow at all. None. Zero sculpt, and you do get these kind of off silver rivets in there, which are yellowish, and they don't look good at all. It's kind of ugly. For the wrists, we have a ball hinge, just like the neck, just like your standard Dragon Ball figures. They rotate a little bit more easily, so that's okay. And now for the torso. I think they did this because of the one pose where he bends over and looks through his crotch. That sounds weird if you don't know what I'm talking about, but that's what it is. So here's the thing. These pop off kind of easily, but that's better than breaking. The design is technically the same as your standard SH figure arts. You have a hinge in there, and then you have a ball peg connected to it, so you can lift it up and pose it around. However, they went way overboard. As you can see, it just totally separates. So they did that so that you could do this pose where he's looking between his legs. I doubt you could ever really balance him like that. You'd probably have to use a stand, but you do have the option. However, because of that, we just have this giant wide open torso. And the unfortunate thing is, it wouldn't be a problem if you could pose him really without that happening, but his posing is so minimal without it. You get a little bit of leaning, and then you get about that much range. And even that has already separated it because there's no real overlap. It's just the tiniest little bit. So posing is super minimal without being egregious. It's just terrible. So I guess that's up to you to decide if that's okay with you. For me, it's not. I'd rather be able to pose him more normally than just do one kind of weird pose. These guys are on hinges, kind of standard. They do come out all the way, so that's decent. We have a waist twist here. It's technically a ball peg, I think, but there's really no range other than the swivel. These black pieces here are just floating caps, and so we have a swivel going forward and back. The legs are pretty loose, so be aware of that. He's kind of tall and has loose legs. There is a little bit of a hinge in the hip. This one won't move. This one will, and that's as far as it goes. And it is also very loose. It's got like one tight spot, and then it's completely flaccid. So be aware of that. Thigh swivels don't work on this guy at all. I'm assuming they're in there, but they just don't work. The knees, terribly sculpted, but they are functional. I don't know why there's a big flat spot right there. It's terrible, but they are functional. And then the ankles have a ball peg that kind of leans forward and back, so you can move the foot a little bit. It's like they took the SH Figure Arts design that was bad and made it worse. You get almost no range out of it, really. And as far as ankle rocker, like almost none at all. There is a toe hinge, but it's really far back in the foot and questionably useful. So ultimately, it's like an SH Figure Arts, but not. It's cheaper, worse engineering, lower quality all around. I don't know. Now, keep in mind that lately their paintwork has been pretty minimal anyway, so it doesn't really stand out too much as having a different paint job, but it does look and feel less like quality product. The really loose hips are a problem. The torso's a problem. I don't know, guys. I could see people justifying this purchase for themselves, and that's fine. For me, it's not good enough. If it was like really impressive as a third-party figure, then I'd be like, all right, cool, whatever, I'll go ahead and pick it up. But it's not. It's not going to come anywhere close to the level of quality that you're going to get in SH Figure Arts, if only for the engineering aspect of it. to me, it's not worth it. I'd rather not pay $70 for a third-party unlicensed figure that's just ultimately not that good. It's just good enough. So if you've got an extra $70 to burn and really want knockoff Captain Ginyu, I don't think you'll be too disappointed. But I don't think people who are expecting these to be on par with SH Figuarts should be expecting that. It's not. It's clearly not. The sculpts are not good, really, at all. The anatomy is terrible, and the joints are not very good overall either. So yeah, I mean, it's good enough. I'll leave it at that. It's pretty much what I expected for a third-party figure. Does it warrant the $70? If it was licensed, I'd say yes. If this was $70 from SH Figuarts, absolutely. But it's not. It's much lower quality, and it's not licensed. So I think they maybe low production numbers keep the price high. I don't know. No way to say. But I guess the verdict is kind of a mixed bag of depending on what you want to get out of it. If you know what you need to know going into it, then you can make your decision. And so now you can do that, and you can decide for yourself. For me, it's a no, but I could understand why somebody would want to. I'll stop rambling. Thanks for watching, guys. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. I have new videos up just about every single day. We talk about action figures, movies, TV shows, video games, all kinds of fun stuff. So make sure you come back for that. And in the meantime, keep collecting.